Welcome to the EX Conversation. This is an extra special episode because I get to speak to one of the co-founders behind Unily. Will Saville joins me and we get to dive into his mentality when it comes to founding the organization and the success of Unily and some of the foundations of what really built Unily from the ground up. Then we also get to talk into his view on why internal communicators are central to the success of an organization. And also the culture behind innovation at Unily and what's continued to drive our success from SharePoint intranets to software as a service to AI native. Let's get into it. Welcome to the EX Conversation, Will. How are you?
Good, thanks. How you doing, Kaz?
Good, yeah, not bad. This is like a special episode because we get to take a bit of a behind the scenes look at not just Unily, but some of the latest innovations. So really excited to have you on. I want to kind of start because I guess you're one of the founding fathers of the modern intranet in a way.
I don't know about that, but
yeah.
I fell into the internet market quite early.
So yeah, I mean, I've been at Unily for 7-ish years, and you've been at Unily since 2006. But what happened before that?
Well, how far do you want to go back?
Yeah, the day you were born. No, just kidding. Was internet the first thing you started working in?
No, I originally did a degree in hospitality, worked as a chef for about 7 or 8 years, and then figured out that I was better at software than I was at cooking. So kind of decided to make a complete career shift in my mid-20s to
Yeah.
software. It was always kind of a thing for me. I'm quite badly dyslexic, so at school I was given a computer quite early, and I just kind of gravitated towards software, pulling computers apart, just really enjoyed all of that sort of stuff. So I was always building websites and doing things like that, even, in the kind of uh, late 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and always felt like it was a bit of a hobby, and then figured out it was probably something that I should take more seriously just before the dot-com bubble burst.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a downward spiral for a couple of years, but it picked up again. And yeah, it just became, kind of web development, websites, web content management, and then leading into intranets just became quite a passion for me, I guess.
So you went from serving up great food to great content.
Maybe, yeah.
So did Unily start as web or was it intranet from the beginning?
So I'd randomly done a few CRM projects,
Okay.
and we were using Microsoft technology to do that,
Yeah.
and kind of quite enjoyed doing that. And then somebody said SharePoint to me, and I had no idea what it was, but figured it out quite quickly. And then also figured out there weren't many people around that properly understood it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that just led to a lot of companies and people saying, can you come and figure out our intranet for us? It runs on SharePoint and it looks pretty horrific. What can you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And because of those web skills, and probably again, bit of, dyslexic, left brain, creative thinking,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to turn pretty shocking looking intranets into something that looked half good, at least.
But yeah, I started my first foray into intranets with SharePoint as well. It's one of those things that even to this day probably is still like part and parcel of what makes Unily so effective. But so we started building on SharePoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the moment that made you realize that, okay, maybe we should do something software as a service separate from SharePoint? Tell me about that time.
I think that I'd just seen the same problem over and over again, and it became abundantly clear to me that there was a better way of doing things than the way SharePoint does things. Not saying that like SharePoint's bad or anything, but when it comes to user experience, I just felt like employees deserved more than they were getting from an
Mm,
intranet. And that's two things, right? That the first thing is the actual user experience of it So not just the way it looks and feels, but how a person interacts with an intranet on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
But also for the content managers, how easy or hard it was in the case of SharePoint to get content into the intranet, keep it curated, add more content, focus on rich content, those types of things. And we were just seeing those problems over and over and over again, and it felt like there was a better solution to help those types of people to build a better intranet.
I've got to work with you very briefly as a product manager, and one thing that I kind of learned in that experience is that you've got a very clear vision and point of view as to like what that good communication looks like, what should be driving our roadmap, and how we add value to employee experience and communications
Mhm.
professionals. Where did that come from?
I think it comes from like obviously I've done a few things, quite a few different things in my career, but the
Yeah.
constant has always been like really good brand, really strong marketing. Um, I've always really zoned in on those things, and I think it comes from that. I think that when you build an intranet, it's just the beginning of the
Hmm.
journey, right?
Yeah.
And what I was seeing is that intranets weren't treated like public facing websites. It, you know, I think you've got to, I think you've got to treat employees the way you would treat customers. Don't just expect them to read your content or come to the site or, like understand what's going on, consume the knowledge on a page or a document. You can't just assume that's going to happen. You
Hmm.
have to actually market to them the way that you would market to customers.
Yeah.
And I think that was like one of the biggest focus areas for me when it came to building Unily and deploying it for customers was that focus around we have to treat employees the same way we would treat customers.
Yeah. Like if you want to do well outside, you've got to start inside with your people. And I
Yeah.
actually think something that like when I first started Unily, something that like struck me was actually like uh we applied that internally. And I started Unily 7 years ago, so like younger than myself, still kind of like junior and moldable in a way. And I think sometimes the idea that like you have a culture that's very friendly and family like it's a bad rep, but actually for me it was like a big part of like how I started to like find myself at work and what I was good at. And it's that like culture that is um built around built with people around you that are that you trust and you have like great
Mhm.
work relationships with. Was that like a conscious decision in terms of like how you built that culture?
I don't know about conscious in terms of building a culture. I'd probably put the highest value on culture, like as much as anything else in terms of being able to build a business. For me, it's all about culture, right?
Hmm.
It's you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast is one of my favorite terms.
Hmm.
Um, uh, so I'm not sure it was intentional to uh, kind of actually create the culture. I think it almost happens via osmosis. It's just the
Hmm.
way you act and the way you are. And if you have to define it too much, it just becomes slightly false, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just what we wanted to be. We wanted to be that company, and we became that company. And
Yeah.
we could have been a completely different company, and there's nothing wrong with that at all either. It's
Yeah.
just,
Mhm.
it's the way we wanted to do things.
Yeah. But I do like I have a lot of admiration for it, and I'm like super grateful because it's kind of like made me into who I am today and what I can do now. And I think um yeah, as you say, like there's something it's interesting because like obviously some companies go through weeks, months of activities trying to define what culture they want, but actually sometimes there's something intrinsic about like how you act and how you lead that like through osmosis creates something special. And I think that's what we've got here, which
Yeah, I mean, you have
hopefully
to live it and breathe it, or it's fake, right? It's
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
simple as that.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of the product.
Yeah.
So we at Unily, I mean, we've been in the game since 2006, which I didn't know what an internet was in 2006. I was too busy watching Hannah Montana, probably. But but like, I want to talk about a bit about innovation because we heard about we started building on SharePoint intranets and then kind of understanding similar requirements and building the Unity software. How what's your kind of like approach to innovation? How do you make sure that like you don't just rest on your laurels and just like do what you've always been doing? Because that's something that once you build something good once, it could be easy just to like rest on that.
Mm. I think I think I'm just like quite a curious person generally, and I love kind of solving problems and creating solutions, and I think that's the kind of the core of innovation, right? It's, you know, innovation is the mother of necessity, I think they say, right? It's just, okay, so it's not necessarily that, but the reality is I really enjoy solving problems. I like creating solutions. I like being able to think about things in um okay, how do we create a solution and turn it into a product and then build a brand around it and position it in the right way so that customers can use it and get real like benefit and purpose
Hmm.
from it. Um, and that was kind of always the approach to innovation at Unily, and it continues to be the approach today as well. So it's never been about going out and asking 100 people what they think of this idea. It was almost like, okay, I've got this idea, let's just do it. It's
Yeah.
the only way we're going to find out whether it's going to work or not. Let's just do it and find out. And when we moved from being a kind of a SharePoint consultancy, right, to a product company and building Unity, I had no idea whether it was going to work or not. Absolutely no idea. But I just felt like we had to give it a try. We had to give it a go. It was just something that we had to try and see if it worked. And, luckily it did. So, you know,
Yeah, we're still here today. So,
it was a good bet.
what are some of your because it's interesting working in business. There are like infinite options of what you can do, and so having a kind of like clear direction is something that like really you having a clear direction really benefits us, and it benefits me and it benefits the product team, and it means we create something compelling that we're sure of. What are some of like the inspirations behind some of that, or is it just something that's part of who you are?
I think some of it's part of who I am, but um, like one of my heroes is obviously Steve Jobs, right? It has
Yes.
to be. And I've probably read his biography 7 or 8 times now. It's the one book that I pick up and I actually read.
Hmm.
Given the dyslexic thing, I'm quite slow at reading. So, um, but the things I just love about the approach kind of Steve Jobs took to Apple products was the simplicity. So that's the one thing that I always kind of align to, like how, a great idea is a simple idea and simpler the better. And
Hmm.
then it's a question of focus and execution and delivery of it, but just not trying to overcomplicate things and just trying to keep things simple
Hmm.
the whole time. I guess that's one of the main things that I always kind of ground myself in when I'm thinking about, what to do next or, how can customers get more out of this feature or that feature.
Yeah. And I guess there's underlying in the whole Apple mentality is like it's not about the product with the most features or uh the most wow features. It's about like being clear as to like who you're delivering for and
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as it coming back to the why, not the what.
hmm
It's not
yeah.
what, it's why you're doing it,
Hmm.
and that for me, that's something I learned from reading that book 7 times. It's all about the why, like, it's
Mhm.
not about the what, and,
So
so for me, the biggest buzz I get is, you know, going out and seeing customers and walking around an office and seeing the Unily home screen on 200 computers around an office, like, it's
yeah,
amazing,
yeah.
you know, or getting feedback from customers at Unite, that's amazing. It's always about the why and not the what.
So we're coming up to like 20. Is it almost 20 years?
Yeah.
That's from 6, yeah, 60, 2000. Yeah. So like, what have been some of like the big milestones on that journey that you're super proud of?
That's a good question. I think that obviously the transition from consultancy to product company was a big milestone, right?
Mhm,
And then kind of the first iteration of our product, we were dependent on Microsoft Office 365.
mhm,
And I just felt like if we continued along that path, we were going to get some of the way along the journey, but not all of the way. We just weren't owning the experience ourselves.
mhm,
And to fully own that, we were going to have to fully build the things that we didn't have.
mhm,
And that was a really hard process to go through because it was almost a re-platforming exercise rather than an exercise of building experiences you know, providing solutions to customers. But we got there, and at the end of that process, it really was a proud moment for
mhm,
me. And again, very scary as well because there were a lot of customers that trusted us because our platform was Microsoft
mhm.
Office 365, and suddenly it wasn't. So, it was a bit of a scary journey as well. But you know, every customer saw the benefit of doing it in the end. So that was uh, that was a very proud moment for
Yeah,
me.
it is pretty cool to see that like, um, when you look at the list of cool logos and the number of employees that Unity actually supports is actually incredible. And yeah, still a journey to go. um, Talking of that journey, so we spoke a lot about that big first innovation, moving from consultancy to product company. Now, um, there's something that's been spoken about a lot and that was announced at Unite last year, which is Unily Futures. I know you were instrumental in that from ground up. What made you think that, okay, like Unity as it is today needs something extra?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a bit of a backstory to it. So when I decided I should let somebody else have a go at being CEO, I decided to I decided to take over a local gym and rackets club. And you'll have to bear with me on this. And the website was terrible, so I started rebuilding it, and
Of
I
course
was
you
just
did.
like, yeah, I was just like, I just can't write any more code. I'm so tired of writing code, and so I decided to try and get GPT to help me, and
Mhm,
I was staggered by the results. And then that obviously got my brain kind of thinking and turning. And like the one thing that I've always really thought about quite a lot are the internal comms teams and how they use Unily. And I think they're often under resourced, have too much work on their plate. And I was just like, wow, this could really solve like a problem. This could be such a big problem solver for those internal comms teams. Imagine if we could just get AI to build out intranets for people.
mhm,
How cool would that be? Um, and that was the seed of the idea, I guess, for futures. And then, I just kind of took that to the wider team. Everybody thought, yeah, that sounds quite like that's a cool thing to do. Uh, and together we figured out how to do it. We just kind of figured it out. And I just think I kind of said it on stage last year. I think it's kind of the most profound product things I've ever done in my life. It's just been
mhm.
an amazing journey, and I was quite a skeptic at the beginning,
Yeah.
and I'm also, kind of wary about AI and where it goes in the future as well. But I also think that it's best to understand that type of technology rather than to ignore it. Just really get into it in quite a deep way, which I've had to over the last year, and
Mhm,
try and figure it out and understand it and and use it for really positive reasons, right? To help people get things done at work and allow them to focus on much higher value things and the stuff they really need to be doing, not the stuff that is time consuming but doesn't deliver a massive amount of value for them.
mhm. Uh, yeah, and so, with you've always kind of been focused on that internal communication audience, and I feel like, um, indie in particular is something that, having worked with a lot of internal communicators, I mean, honestly, just the pace of innovation with Futures has been incredible from, seeing Indie to Glass to seeing some of the underlying things that are delivered as part of that. Um, Indie is something that is clearly unique and differentiated, and honestly, like, really, I can see some of the internal communicators that we work with now using it and seeing so much value. How did you like? Again, there's so many types of different types of things that you can support with. I know we've had a foray into like content creation and lots of different things, but like, how did indie actually get born? Okay, let's start with the name. Actually, how did indie get named?
Indy got named because Indy is my youngest daughter, and
Yes.
it just sounded like a cool name to use. And I thought, I like naming things after my daughters, so it was just an obvious. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll call it Indy. I always like putting names to things. I think it just helps
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the process of building stuff. So it just one morning it just came out of my head, and that was it. But I think Indie got born from a lot of deep research and understanding, both from me and the Futures team around how best to use AI, not like in a chat GPT sense where you're asking it to write an email for you or write a poem for you or do those types of things, but really understanding the technology in, a lot of detail, understanding how prompt engineering works, understanding how um, uh, RAG works, which is a way of retrieving information from different sources,
Mhm,
understanding agentic loops. There was a lot of kind of deep research and understanding on how the different models work and
mhm,
which models are good at which tasks. Um, and that's really how Indie was born from getting that deep understanding of the technology, which is no different to any other technology, right? It's
mhm.
just AI is something a bit kind of sci-fi almost in a way for a lot of
Yeah.
people, really. But when you get into it, you kind of start to understand, you know, a bit more about what it is and how it's doing the things it does.
You probably went through a similar process when building Unily, right? Starting to understand like the
Yeah,
secondary market and things like that. So
yeah.
there's definitely commonalities there.
I think the other thing I would say, Kaz, is that I definitely focus on the internal comms guys, and there's
Yeah.
two reasons for that, right? The first reason is they deserve better tools to do their job, I think,
Mhm,
personally. And the other thing is they're like the mouthpiece for the business
mhm,
to most of the employees. So if you can give those guys the right tools to create incredible experiences, incredible content experiences, then the employees get amazing experiences too, right?
mhm.
And at the end of the day, like, who said it? Richard Branson, like, keep your employees happy and your employees will keep your customers happy. It just, everything kind of goes full circle for me. And I appreciate that intranet is just one channel that people are going to use to communicate with employees. But if it's done in the right way, and obviously it's not just about a web page, right? It's multi-channel, so it can be email or Slack or Teams or it's digital effectively. If it's done in the right way, it can be a really effective way of getting the right message out to the right people.
Yeah. And also I think there's from a technology perspective, I feel like organizations are making or do make hundreds of technology decisions every year, and there's a lot out there. But arguably, the intranet is probably the single most visible one if done right, because it touches every employee, and
Mhm.
uh, it has all the knowledge and information and communications with everything that's going on in that company. So it's not to be underrated at all.
Yeah, I just, it's a kind of a bit of a funny technology because sometimes people struggle to pin like ROI metrics around it, right?
Yeah.
But it really, in my mind anyway, it kind of serves a number of purposes. But the first one being, can you turn it into a platform where people actually get work done? Like, yes, you can. And then also, can you turn it into a platform where you can enable people to absorb kind of tacit knowledge about the organization,
Hmm.
like that water cooler type knowledge that you do tend to only get from one-to-one conversations, but can it be that place where people just naturally consume content and that turns into knowledge in their heads
Hmm.
that helps them do a better job?
Yeah. So indie, with indie in particular, um, there's loads of cool features, functionalities, ways of working that's being created underneath that. You mentioned that knowledge is like central to that. And I know it's kind of built with 20 years of our knowledge. How we actually, because I'm looking at some of the output and being like, this is incredible. Like, so like, how will we actually go from like knowing we've got the people and the knowledge to deliver great experiences to ensuring that's embedded in a product? Because that's the big thing that people sometimes get wary about with AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be careful, when it comes to AI. And obviously, the big thing is you want that knowledge to be grounded in the source of truth, right? You
Hmm.
don't want AI hallucinating around facts or knowledge or those types of things and completely getting it wrong. So you have to be really careful around that. And if you use the right techniques with AI, you can completely control, uh, how grounded the outputs are with AI. But you can't just, for example, throw a 100-page PDF document at any LLM and say, "Can you just summarize that for me?" Because it's going to bust its context window almost immediately, and it's just going to hallucinate and
Hmm.
tell you a load of stuff that's just not it's not true. And I think that's why a lot of people say AI lies. It's not really lying. It's just breaking the bounds of its capabilities and its context window.
Hmm.
And it wants to please you, so it's going to tell you something. It's not going to come back and say, "I can't do that." It's never going to do that because that's not how the models are trained, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to make sure that you're using the right techniques to make sure that the sources of knowledge that you're wanting to make sure are kind of amplified around the organization are are grounded, and there are obviously ways of doing that. And once you've done that, it's then about, okay, like, what's the best way for people to consume this knowledge? And a lot of the time, it's not going to be a hundred-page PDF, right? When's the last time you read a 100-page? I've never read one in my
Probably never.
life. Um, so that's just not the best way for people to consume things. Not when they're busy people and they just want to get something into their heads. So
Mhm.
it's about being able to provide that content in multi formats, and that like that. This is the bit that really excites me because it's the bit we could never do. We just could never get to it without AI.
Yeah.
There's just no way of doing it. Turning that kind of internet experiences into kind of multi content format environments where, if people want to consume a piece of content as a video or a podcast or, you know, any way they want, they can do it. It's,
Hmm.
for me, it's just exciting and liberating at the same time because it just feels like we can give customers something that they've never really been able to get before
Yeah.
without AI.
People can literally, I've worked with customers that sometimes spend thousands, hundreds of thousands on content creation in different formats and things like that.
Mhm.
So it can be a massive cost thing. But also, I think there's something in like culture at the moment. You probably see it with like your family and your daughters as well. Like people will have different types of media that they gravitate towards. Some people are scrolling on TikTok, on YouTube. I know you're not an Instagram person because I tried to send you a
No.
list last, last night that you said you couldn't access. So, but like I spend a lot of time like video and Instagram. They've got people that were on a podcast. There's a different podcast person, and we've got this kind of like era of personalization where people know what they like and want to consume it in the way that they want.
Mhm.
And outside of work, there's lots of ways to consume that. But inside of work, you're still trying to fit that model.
So
You've
so think about that for a minute then, Kaz, right? Because it comes back down to something I said earlier. Outside of work, content creators, they're creating videos, posting reels on Instagram, TikTok, however that works. They're not posting 100-page PDFs, are they? Because they know they need to market to their audience, and they're never gonna do that with a 100-page PDF. But intranets, we're still doing that, right? With it, or people are still doing that. They're saying, "Read this document, this
yeah,
100-page doc. I need you to read this document." It's never gonna happen. It's really about trying to, like, converge some of the things that we do from a marketing perspective in
yeah,
B2C with B2B.
hmm
And it comes down to that point, you have to market to your employees. If you want them to understand something and to gain knowledge from it, you have to market to them in the same way you would if you're trying to attract a new customer
yeah,
or an audience on social media. It's that simple.
yeah. And I think that this kind of like you said also you started kind of in CRM and building websites and things like that. Some of the fundamentals and principles of that are the same. And also I think there was an era where people were kind of scared to say that they would like market to employees, but the reality is, in order for them to do their jobs effectively, in order for them to contribute to the goals of the business, they can only do that in the best possible way with all the right knowledge and information. And there is infinite knowledge and information and comms out there. So you've got to be smart as to how you create and deliver that to employees.
Being able to take content and turn it into all sorts of forms and formats that's easily consumed is just like, wow. I just think, wow.
And it's not
Um,
just like videos. I mean, the videos are pretty cool as well, but there's like infographics, there's a whole load of other options on there as well, right?
yeah.
Um, I feel like every time I see you, there's like something new as part of Futures that I'm like, wow, okay, like the pace is incredible. What are you most excited about in terms of what's coming with Futures and what we can put out there?
I think that, we have Glass landing next month. So
Yeah,
I generally get excited about the next thing that's coming, right?
yeah.
And then once it's done, I'm like, okay, we'll move on to the next thing now. So, we have Glass coming next month. I think that's going to be an amazing feature for employees. And, it's only going to get better. I think it's grounded in the principles of, you know, best in class user experience. It starts with being able to, you know, ask an agent all sorts of questions, um, being able to kind of talk to third party systems, I guess,
Mhm.
through agents. But I think it can be much more than that as well going forward in terms of really giving employees the ability to kind of create information from action, do their best work, all of those
Mhm.
sorts of things. So, so yeah, I mean that's going to be an exciting time when that launches.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously we have the full launch of Futures as well, and that's
Mm.
really about an AI first platform.
Mhm.
It's not a platform with a few AI bells and whistles. It's built from the ground up. It kind of uses LLMs as much as possible to get all of the heavy lifting done, right? So that internal comms people can really focus on, the higher value stuff, the quality of content, how to market it, which people should see what, how a campaign's structured, all of those things that they probably don't get to spend enough time on now because they're
Mhm.
caught in this cycle of like, oh, we need to build a new sub site, we need to build a campaign site, we need to do this and that, and just offloading a lot of that, you know, to an LLM just makes so much sense in my
So
mind. It's high
what
value.
what's the this is like a layman's question, but like I can't I'm not a developer and I see the great output with Futures and Indian Glass, but like what is the big difference between like re-architecting AI native versus how we continue to iterate and tweak and add AI bells and whistles on?
It's really about um, building AI into the core of the product rather than just sprinkling it around the outside. So
Mhm,
it's making sure that um, that large language models understand things like site schemas and page schemas and
mhm,
how to build pages. And when we built Unily 7, 8 years ago, that sort of stuff didn't really exist. So
yeah.
we probably do it, but it's not going to do its best work. And this is about first class AI experiences, AI that really helps you get the task done.
Hmm.
So we really felt like we had to build it in this way, in an AI first way. It's about not using AI to one shot everything. So if it doesn't get it right the first time, it doesn't fail. It understands its task. It
Hmm.
loops until it gets its task complete. And again, that's kind of something that's probably only happened over the last 12 months or so in terms of the understanding of that whole agentic loop. And, you know, if it doesn't get it right the first time, it will retry until it succeeds. And again, it's not the sort of thing that you can do unless you've really thought about the specifics of that from the core platform perspective rather than just, trying to bolt stuff on from the outside in.
Hmm. Okay, cool. So, it's been great chatting. I want to talk a little bit about. I've got quite a couple of questions for you. One is just trying to tap into your like expertise and your experience in the industry, which is like um, what one piece of advice do you wish you'd known at the start of your career?
It's a good question, isn't it? I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever been asked that question before. I'd like probably have to say something I actually said yesterday, which is expect the unexpected. Like, I mean, with AI, I didn't expect it. And, there's a classic Mike Tyson quote, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched until you get punched in the face.
Yes.
It's like that when AI came along, it was just like, wow, you know, and you kind of almost go through stages of like almost stages of grief with it, really.
Mhm.
And then you come to realize that actually this could be super powerful for us, and you know, if we use it in the right way, it can be super powerful for our customers as well. So yeah,
Yes. And
that's what I would say. I've come back to the AI thing again, haven't I? Like naturally gravitated towards
yeah,
AI.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
I think that's good though. I think that's good though. I think it's like part of like, I mean, obviously it's part of who we are now. It's literally like in our DNA now as a product. So it's pretty cool. So we also have a question from our previous guest, which is there any particular comms campaign or organization campaign that you've seen from the outside in and thought, do you know what? That was pretty cool.
I think it would have to be the Apple George Orwell's 1984
Oh,
campaign.
I'm a big Apple fan, but explain a little bit about that to me.
Well, it was the "Here's to the Crazy Ones" campaign, right? Do you remember that? And I
Yes, I
think it
do.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it was the advert was just shown right before the Super Bowl, and it's just such a compelling, like, campaign, just
Yeah.
amazing when you watch it. And it's all about kind of creative people, outstanding leadership, the people that have really made um, a difference to the world. Right? It was
Mhm.
just such an emotive campaign. It was, yeah. I think I would have to say that.
Yeah, I also love that. Like you've reread the Steve Jobs book 7 times. I sometimes will just go on YouTube and watch old Apple adverts and campaigns and stuff.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
it's so interesting. It's their like 50th year anniversary, I think, as well. I've seen some of the celebrations, so like some pretty cool stuff out there. And yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, Will. I just want to say, like, it's been great to chat, hear a little bit about your mentality and kind of what brought the business together. And also, I think, obviously, I spoke about this at the beginning, but I also want to say thank you for like the culture that you've built, because I probably owe a lot of who I am today to that culture and the people and the business that you've built. So thank you.
I think, you know, at the end of the day, Kaz, it's all about having good people, and it's as simple as that. And good people build good cultures, and you know, so there's nothing to thank me for there. You did that yourself.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been great to chat, and yeah, looking forward to more Futures Innovation.
Thanks, Kaz.
If you enjoyed the episode, then remember to click to subscribe, because there's much more where that came from. And let us know in the comments which bits you enjoyed and found super insightful. Also, if you would like to be part of the EX conversation and feature on the podcast, then please get in touch.